I'm Lily. Today I'm going to read you the story, The Witches by Roald Dahl, from page 47 to page 60. Okay, let's read it. Summer holidays. The Easter holidays came and went, and the summer term began at school. My grandmother and I had already planned to take our summer holiday in Norway, and we talked about almost nothing else every evening. She had booked a cabin for each of us on the boat from Newcastle to Oslo at the earliest possible moment after my school broke up, and from Oslo she was going to take me to a place she knew down on the south coast, near Arendal, where she had spent her own summer holidays as a child nearly 80 years ago. All day long, she said, my brother and I were out in the rowing boat. The whole coast is dotted with tiny islands and there's nobody on them. We used to explore them and dive into the sea of the lovely smooth granite rocks, and sometimes on the way out we would drop the anchor and fish for cod and whiting. And if we caught anything, we would build a fire on an island and fry the fish in a pan for our lunch. There is no finer fish in the world that absolutely fresh cod. What did you use for bait, Grandmama, when you went fishing? Mussels, she said. Everyone uses mussels for bait in Norway, and we didn't catch any fish. We would boil the mussels in a saucepan and eat those. Were they good? Delicious, she said. Cook them in seawater, and they are tender and salty. What else did you do, Grandmama? We used to row out and wave the shrimp boats on their way home, and we would stop and give us a handful of shrimps of each. The shrimps were still warm from having been just cooked, and we would sit in the rowing boat, peeling them and gobbling them up. The head was the best part. The head, I said. You squeeze the head between your teeth and suck out the inside. It's marvelous, and you and I will do all those things this summer, my darling, she said. Grandmama, I said, I can't wait. I simply can't wait to go. Nor can I, she said. When there were only 3 weeks of the summer term left, an awful thing happened. My grandmother got pneumonia. She became very ill, and a trained nurse moved into the house to look after her. The doctor explained to me that it's a difficult name. Pneumonia is not normally a dangerous illness nowadays because of the penicillin, but when a person is more than 80 years old, as my grandmother was, then it is very dangerous indeed. She said he didn't care. He didn't even dare to move her to hospital in the condition. So she stayed in her bedroom, and I hung about outside the door while oxygen cylinders and all sorts of other frightening things were taken to her. Can I go in and see her? I asked. No, dear, the nurse said. Not at the moment. A fat and jolly lady called Mrs. Spring, who used to come and clean our house every day or so, moved in and slept in the house. Mrs. Spring looked after me and cooked my meals. I liked her very much, but she wasn't a pet of my grandmother for telling stories. One evening, about 10 days later, the doctor came downstairs and said to me, You can go in and see her now, but only for a short time. She's been asking for you. I flew up to the stairs and burst into my grandmother's room and threw myself into her arms. Hey there, the nurse said. Be careful with her. Will you be all right now, Grandmama? I asked. The worst is over, she said. I will soon be up again. Will she? I said to the nurse. Oh, yes, the nurse answered, smiling. She told us she simply had to get better because she had to look after you. I gave her another hug. They won't let me have a cigarette, she said, but you can wait till they are gone. She's a tough old bird, the nurse said. We will have her up in another week. The nurse was right. Within a week, my grandmother was stumping around the house with her gourd-tucked cane and interfering with Mrs. Spring's cooking. I thank you for all your help, Mrs. Spring, she said, but you can go home now. Oh no, I can't, Mrs. Spring said. Doctor told me to see that you take it very easy for the next few days. The doctor said more than that. She dropped a bombshell on my grandmother and me by telling us that on no account were we to risk the journey to Norway this summer. Rubbish, my grandmother cried. I promised him we'll go. It's too far, the doctor said. It would be very dangerous. But I will tell you what you can do. You can take your grandson to a nice hotel on the south coast of England instead. The sea area is just what you need. Oh no, I said. Do you want your grandmother to die? The doctor asked me. Never, I said. Then don't let her go on a long journey this summer. She's not yet strong enough. And stop her smoking those valve black cigars. In the end, the doctor had his way about the holiday, but not about the cigars. Rooms were booked for us in a place called the Hotel Magnificent in the famous seaside town of Bournemouth. Bournemouth, my grandmother told me, was full of old people like herself. They retired there by the thousands because the air was so bracing and healthy. It kept them. So they believed alive for a few extra years. Does it? Yes. Of course not, she said. It's a tumult. But just for once, I think we got to obey the doctor. Soon after that, my grandmother and I and took the train to Bournemouth, Bournemouth and settled into the Hotel Magnificent. It was an enormous white building on the city front, and it looked to me like a pretty boring place to spend a summer holiday in. I had my own separate bedroom, but there was a door connecting my room with my grandmother's room so that we could visit each other without going into the corridor. Just before we left to Bournemouth, my grandmother had given me a consolation a present of two white mice and in a little cage, and of course I took them with me. They were both terrific fun. Those mice, I called them William and Mary, and in the hotel I sat right away teaching them to do tricks. The first trick I taught them was to creep up the sleeve of my jacket and come out by my neck. Then I taught them to climb the back of my neck onto the top of my head. I did this by putting cake crumbs on my hair in my hair. On the very first morning after the arrival, the chambermaid was making my bed when one of mice poked its head and from under the sheets. The maid let out a shriek that brought a dozen people running to see who was being murdered. I was reported to the manager. There followed an unpleasant scene into the manager's office with a manager, my grandmother and me. The manager, who was named Mr. Stringer, was a bristly man in a black tailcoat. I cannot permit mice in my hotel, madame, he said to my grandmother. How dare you say that when your rotten hotel is full of rats away anyway, my grandmother cried. Rats, cried Mr. Stringer, going mauve in the face. There are no rats in this hotel. I saw one this very morning, my grandmother said. It was running down the corridor into the kitchen. That is not true, cried Mrs. Stinger. You had better get the rat catcher in at once, my grandmother said, before I report you to the public health authorities. I expect there's a rat scurrying all over the kitchen floor and stealing food off the shelves and jumping in and out of the soup. Never, cried Mr. Stinger. No wonder my breakfast toast was all nibbled round edges this morning, my grandmother went on, resentless. No wonder it had a nasty, ratty taste. If you're not careful, the health people will be ordering the entire hotel to be closed before everyone gets typhoid fever. You're not being serious, madame, Mrs. Stinger said. I was never more serious in my life, my grandmother said. Are you or are you not going to allow my grandson to keep his white mice in his room? The manager knew what he was bidding. May I suggest a Come, promise, madame, he said. I will permit him to keep them in his room as long as they are never allowed out of the cage. How's that? That will suit us very well, my grandmother said, and she stood up and marched out of the room with me behind her. There's no way you can train mice inside a cage. Yet I dare not let them out because the clamorade was spying on me all the time. She had a key to my door and she kept bursting in at all hours, trying to catch me with the mice out of the cage. She told me that the first mice to break the rules would be drowned into a bucket of water by the hall porter. I decided to seek a safer place where I could carry on the training. There must be surely an empty room in this enormous hotel. I put one mouse into each trouser pocket and wandered downstairs in search of a secret spot. The ground floor of the hotel was a maze of the public rooms or of the named in gold letters on the ground. I wandered through the lounge and smoking room and card room and reading room and the drawing room. None of them was empty. I went down a long white corridor, and at the end of it, if I came to a ballroom. There was double doors leading into it, and in front of the doors there was a large notice board on a stand. The notice on the board said, or SPCC meeting, strictly private. This room is reserved for the annual meeting of the Royal Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Children. The double doors into the room were open. I peeped in. I was colossal room. It was a colossal room. There were rows and rows of chairs, all facing a platform. The chairs were painted gold, and they had little red cushions on the seats, but there was not a soul in sight. Like this. So I settled cautiously into the room. What a lovely secret silent place it was. The meeting of the Royal Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Children must have taken place earlier in the day, and now they had all gone home. Even if they hadn't, even if they did suddenly come pours in, they would be wonderful, kind people who would look with favor upon a young mice trainer going about his business. At the back of the room there was a large folding screen with Chinese dragons painted on it. I decided just to be on the safe side to go behind this screen and do my training there. I wasn't a bit frightened of the prevention of cruelty to children people, but there was always a chance that Mr. Stinger, the manager, might pop his head round the door. If he had did, and if he saw the mice, the poor things would be in the whole porter's bucket of water before I could stop. I tiptoed to the back of the room and settled myself on the thick green carpet behind the big screen. What a splendid place this was, ideal for mouse training. I took William and Marie out of my trouser pockets. They sat beside me on the carpet, quiet and well behaved. The trick I was going to teach them today was tightrope walking. It is not all that difficult to train an intelligent mouse to be an expert tightrope walker, provided you know exactly how to go about it. First, you must have a piece of string. I had that. Then you must have some good cake. A fine currant cake is the favorite food of white mice. They're dowdy about it. I had brought with me a rock cake which I had pocketed while having tea with Grandmama the day before. Now here's what you do: you stretch the string tight between your two hands, but you start by keeping it very short, only about 3 inches. You put the mouse on your right and hand a little piece of cake on your left hand. The mouse is therefore only 3 inches away from the cake. He can see it and he can smell it. His whiskers twitch with excitement. He can almost reach the cake by leaning forward, but not quite. He only has to take 2 steps along the string to reach this tasty morsel. He ventures forward, one paw on the string and the other. If the mouse have a good sense of balance, and most of them have, he will get across easily. I started with William. He walked the string without a moment's hesitation. I let him have a quick nibble of the cake just to whet his appetite. Then I put him back on my right hand. This time I lengthened the string. I made it about 6 inches long. William knew what to do now. With superb balance, he walked step by step along the string until he reached the cake. He was rewarded with another nibble. Preston William was walking a 24-inch tight rope, or rather tight string, from one hand to another to reach the cake. It was wonderful to watch him. He was enjoying himself tremendously. I was careful to hold the string near the carpet so that if he did lose his balance, he wouldn't have far to fall. But he never fell. William was obviously a nature acrobat and a great tight rope walking mouse. Now it was Mary's turn. I put William on the carpet beside me and rewarded him with some extra crumbs with a curd. And then I started going through the same routine all over with Mary, my blinding ambition. You see, my dream of dreams was to become one day the owner of a white mouse circus. I would have a small stage with a red curtain in front of it, and when the curtains were drawn apart, the audience would see my world-famous performing mice walking on tight ropes, swinging from trapezes, turning somersaults in the air, bouncing on trampolines, and all the rest of it. I would have white mice riding on white rats, and the rats would gallop furiously round and round the stage. I was beginning to picture myself traveling first class all over the globe with my famous white mouse circus and performing before all the crowded heads of Europe. I was about halfway through Mary's training when suddenly I heard voices out the ballroom door. The sound grew louder. It swelled into a great babble from many throats. I recognized the voice of the upper hotel manager, Mr. Stinger. Help, I thought. But thank heavens for the huge screen. I crouched behind it and peered through the crack between two of the boarding sections. I could see the entire length and width of the ballroom without anyone seeing me. Well, ladies, I'm sure you will be quite comfortable in here, Mr. Singer's voice was saying. Then in through the double doors he marched, a black tailcoat and oars, spreading his arms okay, wide as he ushered in a great flock of ladies. If there is anything we can do for you, do not hesitate to let me know, he went on. He will be served for all of you on the Sunshine Terrace after you have concluded your meeting. With that, he bowed and scraped himself out of the room as a vast horde of ladies from the Royal Society of the Prevention of Cruelty to People came streaming in. They were pretty clothed, and all of them had hats on their heads.